Oh yeah, baby. You know what that means. It's time for IMNSHOW, in my not so humble opinion, with a W on the end, with DP Knudten. That's me. And what I do is I get on here and I opine about whatever's going on in marketing and branding and stuff like that. Or I do what I'm going to do tonight, which is have an actual live stream conversation with someone for my nonfiction brand podcast. So stick around for the next hour and you're going to meet someone fabulous that you're going to learn a lot from, especially if you're in an industry where you think, well, you know, social media is not really for me. Well, I'm here to tell you you're wrong, and so is she. Let's welcome to the Nonfiction Brand podcast, the lovely, the talented Heather Ewing from Abstract Commercial Real Estate. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and what people on the nonfiction who are listening, see, this is what happens. I'm going to cut all this out. I'm going to edit out my little stumbles. And if you have any stumbles too, don't worry, Heather, because I'll cut those out to make you sound brilliant.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. What people who are listening to the podcast don't know is that you and I met because of social media. Do you remember?
Exactly.
Do you remember that story? Can you relate that story?
Definitely. So I don't remember what I was doing exactly. I was scrolling through social media and I came across one of your videos. And of course, you were very entertaining. And I don't even remember the exact details of it, but the gist of it was about networking. And it was 1 million cups. And I was like, oh, he seems neat. And I'm like, 1 million cups. Sounds like a great group. I'm going to check it out.
Right. So what Heather is talking about is there's a national thing. It may be even international now. I don't know. A group called 1 Million Cups that is kind of a networking business group for people. And the concept comes from the fact that if you've got a startup or a small business or even a growing, scaling business, it takes you 1 million cups of coffee to really get going and off the ground. So I did one of those walk talk brand videos saying, hey, I'm going to this thing. And who shows up but Heather? And we hit it off gangbusters. And then I look, this was maybe 3-4 years ago. And then, of course, COVID intervenes and we lose touch and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, I'm keeping up on all things social media because I'm a creative director who has to know these things. I'm on TikTok of all things, and I see Heather, a commercial real estate broker who's doing these regular videos on TikTok, sharing not only, hey, there's a new listing, but dudes, I'm getting ready to go to Berlin to run a marathon. And I'm like, wait a minute. Is this the little Heather Ewing I knew from years ago who's just really kicking butt on TikTok? And the answer apparently is yes. Why,
Sure is.
Heather? Why, Heather, have you embraced TikTok as one of your channels on social media to get the word out about what you do, who you are, and how you do it?
It's a great question, DP. And actually, when I started my own firm, I wanted to do something unique and different. And it is such a great emporium for connecting with people for free. Where else do you get an opportunity like that? You can spend thousands, millions if it's in the budget on advertising in different venues. So I saw an opportunity and I seized it. And it's about differentiating, right? Your love and expertise of branding. I use that for my advantage of no one else in the market was utilizing videos on social media. And I thought, what a great opportunity. And that's how it all started.
Well, amen. I tell you, you hit it on the head, which is no one else is doing it. Plus, it's like this whole suite of power tools. Everyone else is toiling with little dull knives to cut down a sequoia redwood tree when there are all these power saws just waiting there, but they aren't doing it because, well, I've never seen it done, or, I'm a little too old and this is for 20-year-olds in crop tops on beaches doing mimetic dances and stuff like that. And the answer is no. And I remember watching Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, one time,
Yeah,
and he's put it very succinctly. If you are, if you think social media is just for fast-fingered 20-year-olds, you are
hmm,
wrong and you're leaving money on the table. Absolutely
definitely.
right. Well, let's talk about your
Completely.
experience embracing social media. What has it done for you? Have you actually created relationships and converted into real transactions because people recognize you from those videos that you're doing on TikTok, and I think you're on Instagram heavily too, and LinkedIn as well? Because one of the things you're doing is you're not just posting one place, you're posting
Hmm.
everywhere.
Right. Well, to your point, it has garnered a lot of business, especially as anyone in 100% commission sales, such as commercial real estate. You realize that your greatest resource is your time, and your energy is right behind that. The fun thing is, since I have been doing it for, I think, approximately 3 years, the videos and things, it took me a little bit to get going, is that here's a perfect example. I was on a flight coming back from a big retail conference in Vegas, and I didn't time it very well with beverage cart, or maybe I did, not knowing. Talking to talking to a few strangers in the airplane. All of a sudden, someone hears my voice and they're like, Heather. And I'm like looking around, and I was like, yes. And he's like, we're connected on LinkedIn. And I was like, oh, I'm like, well, it's great to meet you in the flesh. Different state. What's the chance of that? And now I'm representing them. So that's a perfect example. Also, when I'm out in the streets of Madison, I've had people yell across the street, hi, Heather. And so it's kind of fun. Madison is a very small market, but I work with nationals through social media, regionals, locals. So it is very effective. And I think it comes down to having solid content.
How blown was your mind when someone recognized you, not by your face, not even your hair, but your voice?
It really blew me out of the water. It's something I would never have imagined. And I think the really nice thing about it, again, is that it's a free resource. And when you tie that in with market knowledge and I think a good personality, life favors those types of activities. And I think being consistent, which is something that I know you thoroughly understand, what happens is people, one, want to create their first video and be perfect. And two, they think that they can do it a few times out of a week. But consistency is really important. And what I love about it is the realness of it.
Yeah, well, and the thing about that consistency is you will naturally get better the more repetitions you
Mhm.
do, Like I've always used the metaphor, it's like going to the gym for the first time. You walk over to that free weight rack and maybe you can only pick up the 5 pound dumbbell, right? Well, you do a few reps
Right.
on that and you go, okay, well, that wasn't great. It wasn't Olympic quality, but it's what I could do today. Then you come back the next
Exactly.
day, you do a few more reps on the same with the same weight. Then after that, you go, I can add more weight. And all of a sudden you've mastered the technique to the point where you almost look forward to doing these things, especially when you start to see the reaction of people around you on the street or whenever you're trying to actually engage with people the old school way, which might be at a networking event or even via cold calling.
Right. And I think the other thing about it too is authenticity, especially post COVID, but just in general, authenticity is such an important factor of life that I think sometimes people lose sight of it. And that's where my videos, they're only one or two takes. They're not scripted. I like to think of maybe a couple bullet points in my mind of something I want to talk to. And then I just shoot it with my iPhone. There's no camera crew. It's really that simple. And then I post it. So it only takes a few minutes. I've gotten to the point of where I walk in between appointments and something will pop into my head of what I want to talk about, and I'll talk about it. Or maybe something that I'm encountering in a deal that might be beneficial to others, or just sometimes I want to parlay a little information that I think people should be aware of. And I've had pepper in my teeth later that I found out, a little bat in the cave. Not excited about that one, but they're real. And I think people really connect well because of that.
Well, you hit on something, which is that so many people are stuck on perfection that they end up
Hmm.
not doing anything. And
Right.
and yet all of us realize that perfection is not perfect in terms of engaging authentically. Like I'm thinking about a song that I have seen on TikTok that three Nashville songwriters wrote. They recorded it while sitting in a old silo with kind of a fire burning and the lights are reflecting off and a single microphone source, probably someone's iPhone, and it doesn't matter because the song
Mhm.
is so compelling. Their performances are so real and raw that it comes off
Yep.
so powerful that unbeknownst to them, it is now a huge hit on TikTok because
Yep.
people are dying, literally dying for the authentic human connection in this land of artificial everything.
Oh, definitely. And I think too, with that authenticity is people are at such a hurried pace in general in life that I think if you were to ask of what they genuinely feel about maybe their career, their health, relationships, different things of that sort, they probably don't even know themselves because I think we're so disconnected with ourselves unless you make an intentional point to do so. But then also, it's just such a fast pace. And I think people just aren't comfortable with themselves and thus a lot of perfection. And I know in my earlier years, I was trying to be perfect. It was painful, it was a lot of work. And it's a bar that you can never meet. So I think just loosening up, getting to know who I am, what's important to me, what's not, what I stand for, that it just makes it a lot easier. And I think it's finding comfort in your own skin that does give you wings. And as you allow and approve of that in your life, I think you help others to also accept and approve uh, their feelings of themselves as well.
Well, you alluded to earlier that you're in a business that is, I'm going to put it in my words, not your words. It's a good old boy network sector of the economy. You know, it's typically who you know, how long you've known them, how much
Mhm.
golfing you've done with them, you know, and the transactions can be enormous. So
Oh,
consequently,
definitely.
there's a relationships are not the value of the relationship, but the value of how many transactions that relationship can bring to you over time. This is not a one and done thing at all, right? It's
Right.
something you want to cultivate that relationship because they might be at construction company A for now, or you know, working for whatever commercial real estate uh, agency or corporation they are now, but they aren't going to stay there forever. And if they have the relationship with you, they take you wherever they happen to go. So how, and this is
Mhm.
specifically for the ladies in the audience, how do you approach doing what you're doing the way you're doing it in a
Yeah.
sector that doesn't naturally do it and a sector that kind of prefers or perhaps leans heavily on the male side of things?
So something that's interesting is I've always worked in arenas professionally that the majority of people I was surrounded by were men. So one of the funny things that people may not know about me is I was a little tomboy when I was growing up, and actually my dad raised me from age 12 forward. My mom had passed when I was young, so in that sense, I grew up, close in that arena, and then all of the careers that I had worked in 20 plus years, it was all guys. So when I did get into the commercial real estate sector, for me, it's really seen it as a performance sport. And this is how I see life is that you line up at the start line, and it's one of those you want to bring your best strength, your best game. You want to make sure you're hydrated for the race. You want to make sure that you've eaten adequately, that you've done all of the training, that you've pushed to become your very best. The race gun goes off and everyone goes, and whoever crosses the finish line first is the one that wins. And I see that it doesn't matter what your personal parts are. If you want to say, it's how good you can perform at the job, of how well you can understand people, how well you listen, and can you solve intricate problems. And also, It's not something that's done in a couple of months. A lot of times it can be 12 months, sometimes it's years, and a deal can disrail. So being a marathoner to me is just a beautiful and symbiotic relationship to commercial real estate. And I think it's one of those too of you have to know yourself, you have to know your no, and you have to be firm in what you believe. And you have to say yes to deals that are right for you and in your lane, and no to others that aren't, and refer them out. It's not an easy arena, but it's also extremely gratifying, and it's a place that I call home. And I think in any arena, you're always going to have a few people that are just bad seeds in any arena, including social work, right? Which people would probably see as the complete opposite of commercial real estate. But then within our industry, there are a lot of really great people. And through all my professional careers, typically I was always mentored by men. So in that sense, I've had a lot of really good, solid relationships that I'm grateful for. But I do see, some people that I feel like I've kind of really gotten to a very fortunate place where I have my own firm, I call the shots, and it's really simple in that stance. So I do think I'm kind of an anomaly there as well. But there's only probably about 6 of us women in the commercial sector, so there's just a few.
Wow. One of the things I like about your analogy of marathon, excuse me, one of the things I like about your analogy of marathon running to what you have to do as a commercial real estate broker is the fact that it's about performance, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not about running 26 point, 4 miles?
Two.
The point two. Okay.
26.2.
26.2.
Yep.
It's not about running 26.2 miles the first day you get out running. Like I
Exactly.
remember watching one of your TikToks where you're talking about, hey, this weekend it's my long day. And I'm like,
Right.
well, what's a long day? 12 miles. Oh, well, yeah. Well, I could never run 12 miles. So I'm impressed right there. But I was
If you
also,
wanted
say again.
if you wanted to, DP, I'd get you on a program. You let me know when we're done. I'll get you set up.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm built for comfort, not built for speed, if you know what I mean. But, but, but it's a great analogy because you can't expect to run that great distance your first time out. Instead, you
No.
train and you get better and your performance improves by, say it with me, performing. You can't perform without getting off your butt and doing it. So you've done that in terms
Exactly.
of video to the point where people are recognizing your voice on a plane, which blows my
Right.
mind. But
And
also,
mine.
yeah, well, exactly. And what you've done is you've now created a, dare I say, brand within the commercial
Mhm.
real estate sector that isn't just local here, Madison, Wisconsin, but is
Right.
extending outward. How far out has your brand got from your humble domain here in Madison, Wisconsin?
I mean, New York, California, people have seen different videos, different, even some of my different listings, things of that nature. I'm actually in an affiliate network group now out of California because a broker that I know in New York recommended me to them. So it's a deep um, connection through relationships, which you hit on earlier in commercial real estate. And if you think about it, due to the dollar volume, those relationships are really important because you're entrusting people with a significant amount of money. For some, it's their entire life savings. For others, it's a certain portfolio. And it's really expanded more than I could have ever have imagined. And I'm excited to see where it continues to go. So it's consistency in video, in marathoning, and in delivering in the commercial sector. So you'll notice that they're all connected. And something that's kind of fascinating is that, again, going back to performance, I link the marathon training with the commercial real estate as well too, because if you're sleeping better, if you're making sure that you're hydrated, you're eating clean, you have more energy, you have greater stability within mood, it helps you to be stable through some of the wild things that can and do happen. I frequently joke of who needs to go to Vegas when you're really playing the high stake games any single day. So all of that leads to me becoming an even better person, which then I can perform at a better level in relationships for myself and also in career for clients. And I think life is really about becoming your best, and that's something I have a zest for.
Oh man, I love that. I mean, there is no. Sometimes I'll write copy for my website or something like that. That'll
Right.
have a line in there about professional and personal lives. And every time I
Right.
write something like that, I go, no, there's only one life, and they're all related. The way you are personally is the way you perform professionally. The way you
Yep.
perform professionally is exactly, or should be exactly, the way you
Right.
perform personally. And
Yep.
that to me is the essence of authenticity.
Oh,
I'm
definitely.
I'm sure you see it as much as I do, especially on LinkedIn. You got all these people talking about authenticity, and it comes
Right.
off like some smarmy syrup or something. And no, it's
Right.
just the way you are, the way you act, the way you treat people, and the way you
Yep.
perform. I love that performance
Exactly.
thing. Well, we
Yep.
are going to talk more about performance and about life before social media and life after social media and things like that. But I want to
Perfect.
remind people that you are practicing what I preach in this book right there, Ratoma, the ROI of social media top of mind. You can get that at the house of Jeff Bezos, Amazon.com. Just look up Rotoma, Rotoma, which stands for Return on Top of Mind Awareness, which happens to be the very best thing about social media. It keeps you pinging on people's radars. And let me tell you, Heather is pinging on my radar so much so that 3 years after not seeing her because of COVID, I said, you know what? I got to have Heather on the Nonfiction Brand podcast. So that's why she's here. Once again, I want to thank
I
you
love
for
it.
coming on the Nonfiction Brand podcast, and we will be back next week. But for now, remember, this podcast is brought to you by not only Ratoma, the ROI of social media top of mind, but my second book as well, Nonfiction Brand, Discover, Craft, and Communicate the completely true, completely you brand you already are. That's available at Amazon.com too, so I hope you'll pick up a copy. That's it for this week on the Nonfiction Brand Podcast. I am your host, as always, DP Knudten, and she is,
Heather Ewing, abstract commercial real estate.
and we'll be talking at you again next week. Bye bye.
Thanks,
Pause,
DP.
pause, pause. Now, if you're watching the live stream, we do 2 episodes in one conversation. So we're going to pretend that time has shifted and we have gone into the next week already by saying, Heather, performance. I love your idea that you presented last week that you are not a marathoner and a commercial real estate broker. You are a marathon commercial real estate broker, all in one. And that, I think that's exactly true. I want to ask you, you've hit social media hard with your videos, and I think they're fun. They're brilliant. They do the Ratoma
Thank you.
thing of keeping you top of mind with perfection. What has, if you look back to before you did that, if you look back to before you hit that play button or that record button on your phone for your very first video, and now, between then and now, what changes have you seen in your life, your career, your relationships your relationships in the commercial real estate sector? What's the change been?
Definitely. Well, it's definitely been a big one. There's been several changes. So when you take a step back, the first 5 years I was really cutting my teeth, getting to know the basics. I did a ton of networking. It's always been the retail restaurant deals, the new mixed use developments. So that was 5 years with a different firm. And then interestingly enough, tying into performance is that I ran a marathon, the New York Marathon, and it had been about 17 years since my first one. And after that, it just really started. making me think about life, what I want, where I was at. And I decided to go out on my own. And with that, it really took a vision. I was scared, beep, 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 right? But also very excited because going off on your own, we call it a success tax. Something that's different in commercial real estate is that when you change firms, unlike if you have a regular job, you get your paycheck and you leave, a couple weeks, a month with notice, whatever it might be, maybe a couple of months. In commercial real estate, you don't always get paid for your deals. So it's a little bit dicier, as you can imagine, in that realm. So, anyways, I ended up leaving, starting my own firm. And with that, I had to tie in so that people knew who abstract commercial real estate was. And so I thought, a lot of people know Heather Ewing because I've been doing a ton of networking. I've lived in the area for a long time. And so I plastered my picture on everything so that people could draw the line. And then I later got into video through a broker friend of mine in Florida that I had met through a mastermind. And with that, she was doing videos. And at first I was just like, oh, I really didn't want to. And I'm a big proponent of, you just have to get up and do it. You're going to fumble through. It's not always going to look pretty, but it's the human experience. And people that are victorious and successful in life step up, they move through the awkwardness and are scared to not listen. They do it anyways. And that's a big differentiator in life. And so that's how it all started. So it's definitely blown up in a great way. I have many more connections. It's nice because I'm able to share all the knowledge and market experience that I have in such a niche. Additionally, all my knowledge of Madison. I've lived in the area for well over 40 years. And so it's really being able to share that with people that are interested and also putting my unique twist of the running in with it. And people have journeyed with me on my Paris marathon earlier this year, London before that, Berlin, and I'm on the Abbott trajectory. So it's a nice way for people to get to know who I am and also how I can assist them. And if something's outside of my wheelhouse, I refer them on. So it's pretty neat. And for a long time, I really asked myself, how can I bring more of myself to commercial real estate? And so this is a culmination of all that.
How can I bring more of myself into fill in the blank? If you're listening to this podcast,
Yep.
That's the question you should be asking yourself. How can I bring more of myself into whatever I happen to be doing? I love that. And this goes all the way down to, if you go to Heather Ewing on LinkedIn, Heather Ewing, CCIM, you will see that little profile that LinkedIn allows you to do. It says founder and CEO, Wisconsin retail and restaurant expert, mixed use development, investment sales, national speaker, marathons, 2021 Berlin, 2022 London, 2023 Paris, and 2023 Chicago in training. That to me is incredibly interesting because it goes back to that idea, one of your key words, performance. By posting that there, you don't talk about your favorite country band or, your favorite style of music or your favorite foods.
Right.
You focus on two things, commercial real estate and marathons. That is very cool because one of the things salespeople want to do is when they're trying to create a relationship is find that one thing that their prospect might be interested in that they could talk to them about. How many people in sales are trained to, if you get that face-to-face meeting, first thing you do is scan the back wall. What do they have on the wall? Do you see the globe and anchor of the Marine Corps? Great, we can talk about that. Or, there's a picture of them on a river with a beautiful brown trout in their hand. Great, they're a fisherman. I can talk to them about that. Whatever. You aren't doing that. You're coming in and saying, this is what we could talk about regarding me, which is a great entree to countless conversations, even for the non-runner who might be curious about, what was it like to run in Paris? I mean, Did you start at the Eiffel Tower? Did you end at the Eiffel Tower? Well, how many people were there? I have 100 questions. Let me say that again. I have 100 questions for you based on that one factoid alone. You ran a marathon in Paris? That is
It
so
was
cool. What was that like?
50,000 people.
How many?
So that's the interesting 50,000.
50,000 people.
50.
Wow.
Yes. So for me, I had just missed qualifying for the Boston Marathon when I ran London. And that just burned up my back end, as you can imagine. And so when I scheduled Paris, my goal was to Boston qualify because Boston, I think, is the #1 marathon, or either the top one or the top two within the world, is my understanding, for notoriety. And so you really have to time qualify that if you're a runner, right? It's just one of those stakes. So you really have to hone in on a lot of different things personally for performance and otherwise. And with that, my watch died after the first mile, or I should say stopped, and I was just like, no. And then when you're overseas, it's kilometers, it's not miles. So I have a rough gauge of things, but definitely I'm not well tuned in on the details of that. And then my earbuds died around 15. So I told myself that, just like in all these other things, that it's mind over matter. And I was going to give every little ounce I had to make it across that finish line in the appropriate amount of time. And what's interesting is it's short of 4 hours, but it's like a sprint for that long. So it reminds me of deals too, of knowing when you have to push hard and when you kind of relax a little bit. And it's all for the end goal to deliver. And I remember pouring some water into my bottle, and it's like seconds count. And luckily I beat my time by like a minute and some, I believe. And so I finished for the threshold for Boston, which was very exciting. But it's really a unique arena. And what I found too early on in my career, actually in operations in my 20s, that people respect sports. And I've always loved sports. I didn't get into it until later. And I actually wasn't a cross country or track runner ever. So the interesting thing with that was that my love of the outdoors, of running, of pushing, that was also very well respected in a lot of different arenas, and it becomes a talking point. And so for me, a lot of people might have ran in the past, or they know someone, and different things like that. So to your point, it all weaves through, and it's really kind of neat. So I feel very fortunate. And when I was in Vegas at a retail conference, people asked me about the next marathon, the prior one. Locally, people even are tracking my times, certain ones. I'm like, whoa, that's a lot of pressure.
Okay, listeners, do you hear what she's doing? She's taking that flag she has that is marathon running and tying it into every story she tells about actually doing commercial real estate. And the metaphors you're using, you didn't use the word "I'm in it for the long haul," but that's what you were implying. The when things got hard, I got running. And I worked harder, and I didn't need an outside chronometer to tell me how fast I needed to go. I knew I needed to go because I had an ultimate goal, which was qualifying for the Boston Marathon. Do you see? There's no separation between Heather, the runner, Heather, the person, Heather, the professional, and Heather, the commercial real estate broker. And this is exactly what she brings onto her TikTok and her LinkedIn videos and things like that. I'm sorry, I can't tell you how many times I've seen you sweating on your videos.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then dead bugs. Because later at times I'm like, oh, my God, like just, my neck has all these dead bugs because I love, running through the wooded nature areas at different times. But here's an interesting fact that I think you and the viewers will enjoy. Marathons are great because it allows you to see the big picture, your end goal, and you have to be able to break it down. And then you have to have the consistency and the discipline to carry it out, right? And nothing is ever perfect. And sometimes plans shift and change, but you need to adapt, be resilient, and you're committed. So it's not something you want to do, you've decided. And so when that comes into the commercial real estate deals, especially on these longer ones that are 12 months or longer, or sometimes, some even that are 6 months, 9 months, we call it deal fatigue. And you can see where people aren't used to some of the ups and downs and all the unknowns and different variables that can come into play. And they start getting tired. So then it's really helping to connect with them, understanding the biggest concerns so that you can solve those problems and then keep them renewed and complete the deal, because at the end of the day they still want this, and maybe it's a property or an investment or a 1031 or whatever it might be. And so that same thinking translates into the deal. So, to your point, performance, it's one big painting, and all of these different elements are simply layer, but they're all interrelated and they stack and connect.
Again, I want listeners to pay attention. She is linking everything she's doing in her life, professionally and personally, back to a central idea, which is that performance flagpole. And not only performance, but long duration performance. If you were a sprinter, that may not be the perfect fit for your professional life. But because you are a marathoner, you can tell this story in a way that gives people a reason to talk to you. And here's one of the things, again, I'm going back to pre-social media days when if you're a successful salesperson or a broker or whatever, you would pray for a good cold call where you could maybe see if they could meet you on a Wednesday for coffee or something like that. Well, now you've got a ton of ways of telling people this is why we should get together. One, I'm a nice person. I have a pleasant demeanor. I do this cool thing that you may do as well. And then we could talk about that for the 75% of our meeting before we even get to the kind of brass tacks of, hey, do you have any stuff going on I could help you with? Those are the best sales meetings where you go in and you talk about the things you love to do, not the things you have to do. And you've given me a perfect excuse to walk across a conference hallway to say, hey, Heather, you don't know me, but I know you. And I tried that visor you talked about, the one that absorbs all the sweat. Thank you for that recommendation, because I hate to say it, I'm a bit of a sweater myself. Just
right there with you.
You know that these are the things that allow people to come toward you, so you don't have to. It's like outbound marketing. I'm sending this out there about myself, so so that you can come inbound toward me. I love it. And again, what are your plans now that you have conquered video on LinkedIn and TikTok and things like that? Do you have any
I don't know more about conquered, but I appreciate that.
Well, no, you okay. I say you conquer it because I went in and one of the things I try to do when I interview people is go to like TikTok and then scroll all the way down to their very first one. I'm not sure I could find your very first one because you've done so many of them. I mean, and listeners, I'm talking at least 75, maybe 100. I don't even know. Yes, you have conquered and you continue to conquer that. Do you have any plans for now that you are bench pressing 350 pounds? What are you going to do now to up your game, up your performance even more?
I am always open to different ideas. So for me, it's really expanding my team, but also I'm a creative spirit. So I get different ideas when I'm running, different dreams, and just in general. So I'm sure there will be some things that pop up. You keep hearing a lot about AI and chat GBT, things of that nature. Starting to play around with that, see what it might have to offer. I'm still very big on having it's a creative endeavor for me. And so for me, I really enjoy it. And I think too, any way I can help people connect more with what brings them joy, help people with the investments, the leasing, the sales, things of that nature. I think it's really important. And also that there's the message for that comes in a variety of different ways. And I personally, I think I really struggled finding what I enjoyed in life, especially in the early years. I started in the safe, stable arena and ended up in operations for 11 years with great companies, but I just felt dead inside. And that sounds really heavy, but that's genuinely how I felt. And so what's interesting, and I don't know if you know this, but I ended up with a really bad car accident. And it really started me asking in my early 20s, who am I? What am I? What do I want to do? I know what I don't like. But it all felt impossible again, right? I wasn't able to back then create the big picture to begin breaking it down. And so that's something that's very near and dear to my heart. And I feel so fortunate, after these 9, 10 years in the commercial sector to feel like I'm really in my groove. But it's something that I always enjoy talking to people about too, to help them put the next piece of the puzzle together, personally, professionally. And for some, that might be commercial real estate because it offers so much. And I always say it's one of the best self improvement arenas you could work in, because who I was when I started years ago is very, very different than who I am today. And I feel very grateful and I'm humbled by that and want to pay that forward as well.
Wow. I think that is so cool that you have done what I
Mhm.
would say is the work to figure out one of the key things of nonfiction branding: who you are, what you do, and how you do it. The who you are, performance oriented, creativity, and that big word entrepreneurial. One of the things I
Yeah.
do when I talk to people about branding, whether it's personal branding or small business branding, is think of a continuum. On one end is a bureaucrat. I know what I'm doing on Wednesdays at 2 o'clock because on Wednesdays at 2 o'clock, I always do this. Then on the other end is a pure entrepreneur, which is, I got a plan for the first 10 minutes of my Wednesday, but even then it's going out the window. So I'm going to do whatever comes when it comes because that's the way I roll. I don't want to be juggling the same ball on a Wednesday when what I can really do is deal with life as it's coming at me, the challenges and everything else. You have to figure out where on that continuum you exist. A lot of people exist somewhere in the middle. But the reality is that most people lean one way or the other, which is I want safe, I want exciting. And exciting can be really difficult and stressful and
Yeah.
rewarding and wonderful if you have the right, personality and frame of mind. Safe can be very warm and cuddly, or it can be life threatening in its dullness, especially for
Right.
those who are entrepreneurial. I just heard you say, I discovered I'm entrepreneurial.
And what's interesting though is I've never considered myself like a very risky person, which might sound kind of odd. The interesting thing is growing up, it was dot your I's, cross your T's, make sure you've got the 2 week vacation, your 401k, right? And I think it's really important to plan. And again, people want to start something and know that they're going to be successful, that they're going to make money or they're going to break even or something. And that's the thing. You have to learn to rely on yourself, create a smart plan, collaborate, and strategize, because otherwise you are not going to be successful. And what's interesting is, this wasn't my first business. Years ago, I started with um, an art business, my oil paintings, and then it went into fitness, and then it went into coaching. And what's interesting is as I look back and reflected, I was missing really important elements in each of those. What I should have done as hobbies, I thought I'm going to create an LLC and I'm going to get going, right? But the heart was in the right spot, but wow, did I need some good mentoring. And the fascinating thing now is in the commercial real estate realm is that I come across business owners in all categories, from minimal money where they can't get off the ground to multi millionaires. So it's interesting. You can see what's going to be successful. And what I always like to do is people that I don't feel are quite ready at the end of the day, it's their choice. But I like to set them up with a step or two that they can take. And as they do that, to come on back. And what's fascinating is the amount that have returned is very small, because a lot of times people want a quick fix. They want the guarantee. They want all the amenities of a safe job with the pay of the insecure job. And it doesn't work that way. And it was tough learning. And there's a lot of ways I could have done it much differently. So I feel very fortunate. But you learn to really trust yourself and to know yourself and where your skills lie and where they don't. And that's why I always tell people, stay in your lane for commercial real estate or whichever arena. If you want to get from residential to commercial, find a great mentor so that you can deliver to a client, because there's nothing to me that's more saddening than when people want to get into commercial and they don't know the arena and they end up hurting their quote client. And to me, I don't agree with it in any way, shape, or form. Put measures in place with the right people if you want to start doing things like that, or refer them out and just take the referral. So I believe what comes around goes around.
Absolutely. But one of the things that I love about what you're doing is, as I drive around Dane County, Wisconsin, I'm going down Main Street in Waunakee, the only Waunakee in the world, and I see a number of storefronts that are available. Whose sign do I see in that? I see a big red sign that says Abstract Commercial Real Estate, Heather Ewing. And I've seen Heather Ewing.
There's only one left on Waunakee, too.
Really? Congratulations.
The others have been leased. Yeah,
wonderful.
Thank you.
But my point is, I see those signs. I see your videos. And I'm constantly getting these pings on my radar of Heather Ewing. And if someone said, hey, we're looking at doing a microbrewery and so, and my first name out of my mouth would be, oh, let me tell you about Heather Ewing. She's great. You'd love her. You should at least meet with her, because she would definitely refer, if she isn't right for you, she's the type of broker who would refer you to someone who was. And she's also a great barometer about all things commercial real estate in our neck of the woods. I know nothing. I know nothing about commercial real estate, but I know that you are a decent person who I've only had quality interactions with. And I believe that you would reward my referral with performance worthy of that referral, which makes me comfortable giving you that referral, you know?
Yeah. No, and I think it's one of those, I hold those things in high regard, because that's a big deal. Just like when I refer someone out, I want to make sure that they're taken good care of also. And I think it's one of those, sometimes there's capacity issues. And that's where I've had to tell people too, of like at different segments of time of, I would love to help. I just can't right now. And I always feel that it's better to be honest and to let them know that and refer them to someone else, that can help them with that, than to say yes and not be able to devote the amount of time that's needed. Because again, I value my time. I value the clients that I'm already working with, and also whomever I'm speaking with, that it's important to them, and time is money, and I want to make sure that their needs are covered. So that's a number one.
Well, amen, sister, on that. I mean, Heather, as you can tell, has a really great soul, really great heart, and a really great brain as well. And evidently some good lungs too, if you're running marathons, and legs. Let's not forget that. Well, I want to let people know how they can connect with you. So obviously you're on TikTok as Heather Ewing Madison. So check her out there. Right. LinkedIn, another big channel for you. You can just look her up. She's Heather Ewing, spelled Ewing. And she's the Heather Ewing that has a comma CCIM after her name. And you'll know it when you see her because she'll be mentioning marathons in her profile. Definitely connect with her there. And if you have any commercial real estate needs in the greater Dane County area, in the fine state of Wisconsin, or even beyond that, you should touch base with Heather, because here's the one thing I know about her. She's a relationship broker, not a transactional broker. Doesn't mean she doesn't like a nice, hefty transaction, but she's not about that. She's about performing for you so that you can be satisfied with whatever it's are. So check her out. Are there any other ways? You just started a podcast, right? Tell us about your podcast.
I did. Definitely. So again, another creative pursuit. And I like to educate and share through creative means. So I had been thinking about it earlier in the year, and one of my 2023 objectives was to create the podcast. So I got that going, and it's been really fun. So talking with local operators, talking with people from out of state, California. I've got North Carolina done. I've got Florida on the docket, Texas, and also what's nice, some of our locals, from municipal approvals to an Ironman. So I do occasionally throw in a sports person, and it's just been very fulfilling, and it's nice to connect and to, again, share value. And each person is unique and different so that they can serve us in different ways. And it's really connecting people and helping them learn about it. So it's been very fulfilling, and something I haven't talked about really yet is that I am going to also start a blog. So that's coming out next month.
Well, best. See how all this stuff ties in? It's the marathon metaphors that actually are dovetail perfectly with the commercial real estate spiel and all that stuff. I think you're doing a fantastic job. I am so thrilled at the way you have embraced social media the right way, not the huckster way, not the snake oil way, but the share of exactly who you are, what you do, and how you do it. The three tenets that kind of really are the pillars of nonfiction branding. Thank you so much for being on the Nonfiction Brand podcast, Heather. Again, you can hook up with her at LinkedIn, Heather Ewing, CCIM, or on LinkedIn or on TikTok, Heather Ewing Madison. Definitely check her out if you are a marathoner, because you'll get a wealth of tips and inspiration from her. And again, I hope to see you in and around Dane County, the Madison area, now that I'm coming out of my cave post-COVID.
Right.
My God, I seriously, I feel like spring has finally come, and things are really starting to slowly get back to normal. And, maybe I'll see you at 1 Million Cups. That's now at...
it'd be wonderful.
Yeah, it's at Starting Block now in the American Family Building. Just upstairs instead of in Dream Bank these days. But anyway, thank you so much for being on the Nonfiction Brand podcast. Again, it's always brought to you by the Nonfiction Brand book, Nonfiction Brand, Discover, Craft, and Communicate the Completely True, Completely You brand you already are. My book over at the House of Bezos, Jeff Bezos, Amazon.com. Pick up your copy today. That's it for this week on the Nonfiction Brand podcast. I'm DP Knudten, your host, and she is
Heather Ewing, Abstract Commercial Real Estate.
And I'll be talking at you all next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, DP. Bye-bye,
hey,
everyone.
No problem. Hey, so pause. I'm going to do the outro for the live stream, folks. Thank you so much for watching this. And hang on, just after I turn off the live stream, I just want to say thanks and all that stuff. But to listeners and viewers of the live stream, as always, thanks for stopping by, and I hope to see you sometime in real life. IRL, baby. Until the next time, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.